Natalina, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
The honor's on my side. You already inspired hundred thousands of people all around the world. So I'm very grateful that I have a room with you for the next hour in order to find out how you became this instigator of inspiration, so to say. Where in the world are you right now for the people who can't see us?
I'm in Orange County, California. I'm on the
California.
sunny side.
Yeah. For the people who don't know you, introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Lena Nasserdeen. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Rise Up For You. And we get the great honor of working with corporations and individuals around the world to elevate their success through human skills. So that's confidence, leadership, emotional and social intelligence. I'm also a two-time TEDx speaker, #1 best-selling author, and I love to sing. So that's a little bit about me.
That moment when the list of accolades becomes so long that it becomes almost awkward to list all of them in a row, right? I guess that's a good sign.
Yeah.
Tell me the story of how you end up in America.
I was actually born here. So my parents were, my dad was born in Lebanon, and he came here when he was about 22 years old. And he met my mom, who's also Lebanese, but she was born in America. And they met each other, they got married, and they had my brothers and I. And so I was born in Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. Do you speak Lebanese?
I speak a little bit of Arabic, but it's rough. I'm working on it. And so I actually have an Arabic teacher in Beirut, and I take Arabic lessons with her throughout the week. And I hop on Zoom and I try to practice my Arabic with her.
Do you have one sentence that you could say right now? I only know Ana behebek. It means like I love you or something like
And
this,
if I
right?
hit big, yeah, I love you,
Yeah.
or I like it, or marhaba, kifak, shukh barak. So I basically just said, hi, how are you? What's new? What's going on?
Shout out to all the people from the Middle East who listen to this interview right now. Yes, Dad, I mean you. Don't worry about it. So, you've become quite a successful person. Where do we start? Give the listeners a little bit of an overview of how you became the person that you are today. Maybe a good question to start would be if you would write an autobiography, Natalina, what would be the first chapter of it and what would be about?
Yeah, well, I did write a book actually. And the first 2, 3 chapters were more of an autobiography. So it was a little bit about my story and my journey. And I think I would definitely write about all of the different experiences that have led me to where I am today, that also to build the company and the stuff that I teach, with my team and around the world. But, it hasn't been easy. I came from a phenomenal family. I had 2 really amazing parents. And every time I do anything like this, I always talk about them because they were really the pillar of my growing up and my success today. And they always will be. And they were just really kind parents, very loving. And they taught my brothers and I what I think the most important skill today, which is self-confidence, to love yourself, to honor yourself, to always put your best foot forward, always tap into your potential, even if you fall, to get back up, do it again. And so I'm very, very grateful for them. Unfortunately, I lost both of my parents at what I think a young age. My dad passed away when I was 27 and my mom passed away at 31. And that was very painful for me. But I always try to remind myself that I had great quality with them. So like my quality with them was amazing. Do I want more quantity in regards to time? Yes. But my quality with my parents was something that I could never, ever replace. And I just remember when I lost my second parent, which was my mom, I remember I'm the only daughter in the family. So she left me, all the purses and the rings and jewelry and all these things that we think are success, all these things that we work really, really hard for, that we think make us amazing or make us like stand out or make us, feel accomplished. And I just remember standing in that closet and breaking down and crying. And they say that when you have a breaking, you have an awakening. And I just remember thinking, I'm 31 years old and I just lost my second parent and there's all this stuff around me and I don't care about it at all. And I just remember thinking, what does it mean to live a life that you're proud of? What really is success? Because this isn't success because it's all around me and I don't feel happy or fulfilled at all. I feel sad. I lost both parents. And So it really jump started my idea of building and living a life that I'm proud of, and then being able to share that and teach that with companies, organizations, and people around the world. And that to me was a game changer in my life.
What was the favorite virtue of your mother?
Favorite virtue of my mom?
Because you talked about that she left you a bunch of stuff behind. And one of the things, when I think of inheritance of my parents, I always think about how they helped me to form a character.
Yeah.
That's I think is the real thing that they leave us behind. So I'm always interested in like who were the people who fostered you and helped you to develop this beautiful personality that you obviously have.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, it was confidence. Again, all the stuff that she left me wasn't really, it was great, but what is it? She left self-confidence. I mean, I remember my mom would drive my brothers and I to school, and we would be sitting in the back seat, and she would say, "Today you're going to be amazing." And my brothers and I would be in the back, "Today we're going to be amazing." And we would repeat after her. And every single day she would say words of affirmation so that my brothers and we had a self-love and an understanding that other people couldn't take away, right? Because you have teachers, you have friends, you have other family members, you have society that always tell you like, you need to be more accomplished, you need to be skinnier, you need to be this, you need to be that. And she was very smart. She knew that. And so she really tried to ingrain in our little minds when we were younger that we were enough, basically, that we were enough.
I love that. Reminds me a little bit of my mom. My mom was so much a fan of us that it was always embarrassing. I remember having a basketball tournament and my mom was a photographer, and she always used to walk when I took a free throw. She would come to the middle line in order to take a better picture of me. And I was just like, it was the bane of my existence that my mom would come to all of my games. But now that I have a private practice myself, I began to appreciate how valuable it is to have someone who believes in you, a teacher, a mentor, a parent, a brother, a sister. You told that your father was also an important building block. What did he taught you about life, about who you are?
He, along with my mom, confidence, but the thing that my dad really had, I mean, my dad came from a third world country. He came here with $22 in his pocket, and he built a life just from scratch. And the only reason why he came to this country is because his family in Lebanon sold part of their land, and he was the youngest baby, the youngest child. So he was the chosen one that got to come here. And he did not take that for granted. I mean, he worked really, really hard to build a family, to help put us through school, to educate us. And so what he taught us was resilience, and he taught us like infinite potential. I mean, I remember I would come home and I got an A- on my test, right? Which is in the American system, that's a pretty good grade. It's like the top grade. But the highest is an A+. I had an A-. And I remember he just looked at me and he would say, "Why didn't you get the A+?" And I remember thinking, the A- is pretty good, Dad. And he would say, "But could you get the A+? Yeah. Do you have what it takes to get the A+?" And I would say, "Yeah, I do." And his response was always, "Then why didn't you do it? Why didn't you take everything that you had and put it forward? If you know you can be your best, why are you not?" And so he really taught my brothers and I to just always tap into our potential, to be strong, to go after things, even if we fall. It's like, so what? Get back up and do it again, So, and he taught us discipline. I mean, I remember the sun would come up and we would be sleeping and he'd be like, "Yella, get up. This isn't a hotel. The sun is shining. Get up." We're like, "Okay."
And encouraging disciplinarian. That's beautiful.
Exactly. Very encouraging. That's right. Yeah.
My parents are both alive. And one of the things that I'm always interested about is I feel that suffering, separation, breakups, but also death are great teachers if you allow them to be. How has death helped you to become a better person? And what was the moment where you felt that you matured from being a girl to being a woman?
That's a good question. For me, I'm very fortunate because my path even before I lost my parents, was very global, I would say. It was global. So even before I lost my parents, I was touring the world as a singer. And it wasn't about the singing, it was about my exposure to other countries, other people, other religions, other thoughts, other beliefs. And I think that really helped shape me as a human being, just to be more open-minded in general, but also to be more aware and understanding of other cultures, Eastern, Western beliefs, like how people think about philosophy, death, communication, all those things. And I think when I lost my dad, the thing that I learned with my dad is there's no day but today. Like every second of the day, you have to cherish, because even 10 minutes from now, you don't even know what 10 minutes from now holds. Do you know what I mean? And the reason why I say that is because I remember that morning with my dad, you know, not to get too graphic or anything, but we were sitting on the couch, we were drinking our coffee. We always drink our coffee, right? He had his Arabic coffee. I had my little, you know, Keurig coffee. And I remember I was performing that day. We were doing a big TV show in America. They call it the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. It's one of the biggest parades nationally that they put on TV. And so I remember that morning we were drinking our coffee, and then I was running late for rehearsal. So I ran out of the house, and I didn't get an opportunity to say, I love you. I just like ran out the house, and I ran to rehearsal. I got to rehearsal. And I just remember like 10 minutes after I got to rehearsal, my older brother called me and he was like, Dad passed. And I'm like, what? I was literally just there 15 minutes ago. What are you talking about? And that really changed my life, that if you want to say something to somebody that you love, or if you want to do something that you care about, do it. Don't wait, because we don't know where we're going to be in 5 minutes from now, 10 minutes from now, tomorrow. We have no idea. And so I think for me, my thought process since then has always been, when I wake up in the morning, thank you, God, for letting me wake up to have breath. And when I go to bed at night, thank you, God, for letting me live through the day and go back to bed, you know? And those are the things for me that it's just been a game changer in my life. And I always think if I were to pass away tomorrow or today, am I proud of myself? That's the question. If I were to pass away tomorrow, am I proud of how I lived? Have I been a good human being? Did I follow my heart? And I think that's not enough people think about that.
I think so too. And it's crazy. It took me years to understand like the value of gratitude. It's a lot of people use it as a slogan, ask yourself for 3 things that you're grateful for in the morning. But if you come in contact with people who are embittered, who have resentment as their emotional home, it's always a symptom that this person has a lack of gratitude, lack of faith, lack of courage, I feel. And it's these little virtues that if they are installed within us that get us through in the end. I would like to learn a little bit about your episode as a singer where you toured around the world. If you would give that chapter of your life a name, what would be the name of that be?
Oh, that's a good question. Exploration. I think exploration. Yeah, because in every aspect, it was a journey. I was exploring my voice, right? So from like a technical standpoint as a singer, I was exploring what's my voice and how far can I push it? You know, like, can I hit that note? Can I hit the note after that? Can I sing this note? Can I sing this song? So, and then, you know, exploring the world as a singer, exploring different methods of making an impact. I mean, you know, 1 month I'm in Russia singing in English, and the next month I'm in Japan singing in English. So, you know, so exploring you can't do it the same, right? You can't be on autopilot. You have to think, how do I explore like this idea of performing in Russia, which is a totally different country, a totally different energy. And then how do I walk into a country like Japan and perform there, right? That's a whole new different thing. So just exploring different methods, different techniques, different communication styles, you know, things that triggered me. And I would say, exploration for sure. It changed my life. I mean, today I do a lot of speaking. I do a lot of national, international keynote speaking. And it's all because of the performing, like I learned how to read a room because I was a singer. I remember walking on stage and feeling the audience and saying, nope, I'm not going to do that tonight. I'm going to do something different because this audience, I could tell that they're not going to connect with that, but they're going to connect with this, and like being able to shift in the moment.
Do you have advice for somebody who wants to journey soon into the field of speaking, but hasn't yet? Because one of the things that I find very interesting is when you give a speech, as Jordan Peterson often calls this having a conversation with many individuals, because he emphasizes the point that we know how to speak with individuals. But I never thought about that when you're singing, that it's also a form of beautiful conversation that we have with a bunch of people. What did you do in order to put yourself on stage, and what advice do you have for somebody who wants to become a good orator and inspire not just one person, but maybe like a big room full of persons?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, right before this interview, we had public speaking coaching because we teach about, because it's a human skill, right? So like, how do you public speak? How do you communicate? And I learned, speaking of my dad, the best advice I ever got was from him when I was in high school and I was going into the talent show. And I remember I was nervous. I was like, I feel so nervous to go on stage. And my dad said, if you're nervous, then you're being very selfish right now. And I said, I'm being selfish? And he said, well, if you're nervous, you're thinking about you. I don't want to mess up. What if I'm not good? How do I do this? I want to make sure and that's all in the ego state. That's all about you. And so he said, if you really want to make an impact, well, then just go give to the audience. Just like give the audience a big gift. And I don't know about you, but when I give gifts to people, I'm not nervous. I'm happy. I'm excited. I'm passionate. I'm like, I'm ready to go. I want to give them this gift and I want them to receive it. And that was the best advice I ever got. And that's what I use as a performer. And then when I became a performer, the director said basically the same thing, but in a smaller phrase. He said, it's not about you. That's it. It's not about you. And every time I speak, that's what I think about. I just go on stage and I'm like, this has nothing to do with me. I'm here to share a story and to teach something. And the greatest gift is that you take the information and you like it. Some people are going to love it and some people are going to be like, it's not for me. And that's cool too. And you got to release that as a speaker. You just have to know that that's okay. But my main initiative is get on stage, add value, serve. And if I'm not doing that, I have no business being on stage. So that, and I know that sounds a little bit rough, but it's the same thing that I would say to the singers. I'm like, if you're not willing to go on stage and serve and give, go sing in your shower by yourself. But the second you decide to stand on stage, you're making a commitment to give to the people that are there to see you.
Isn't it crazy how sports, singing, entertainment just sometimes teach you things about life that are not just valuable for that domain, but for life in general?
Yeah, absolutely.
I used to be, when I was a basketball player, I was a really terrible free throw shooter. I just hated those moments where everybody was watching me and I was not like a technical player. And one of my coaches also encouraged the fact that just don't make it about yourself. And one of my favorite mentors, Jeffrey Kotler, he might be the best therapist in the world right now. He wrote I think 170 books about psychotherapy or something. He's really accomplished. And one of the things that he taught me was to always start my morning not with the mindset of what can I get today, but who can I help? And it's so useful for phases where you're depressed, phases where you are too concerned with yourself. And having transcendent goals is really important. Who taught you how to live a life that is bigger than the ordinary person's? Because a lot of people, I would say, are not as, don't have the reach that you have, if that makes sense. Like, who do you credit that for? Living a big life.
Yeah, I think again, it's going to go back to my parents. It's going to go back to my parents, and it's also going to go back to my directors that I had when I was a performer. You know what I mean? Because they also pushed us, they kept pushing us. And, like I said, I was very fortunate in the sense that I had these people in my life, so I had my parents amazing in my childhood. And then when I became a performer around 18, 19 years old, then I got these two directors that also like reinforced that same idea of like, push yourself, like keep going, And I think and then by that time, like it was already ingrained in me. So now, obviously, I'm older. I run my own company. I do my own thing, and nobody has to tell me to wake up in the morning and just be my best. I'm like, just gonna wake up and do it, right? Like, why not? I think the question is, why not? Why not? And it takes just as much energy to play small as it does to play big. I always say that it takes the same amount of energy to play little and to play small as it does to just go out there and do it and play big. And when you play big, then big things happen. And when you play small, you stay small.
Tell me about the experience you had with TED. I'm always interested about what that means for the individuals, because it's in Germany we call this Ritterschlag. It's like an anointment, so to say. It's like, here is like, we value you and the work that you have done. Now I'll show the world who you are. And just thinking about this for me, because I expect this to happen to me in the next 3 years or something, gives me a lot of nervousness. I'm like, oh, there I am on stage with my marvelous accent, without the slightest bit of English, talking about my journey. This is not the thing that I'm looking forward to. So what was your experience like? What's your TED story?
It's basically a marathon. It's a marathon. So if you think about a runner that's preparing for, a 10-mile, a huge marathon, it's the same thing. So it took me probably about 3.5 months to just, and again, I think it depends on the person and what they want out of it. But my objective was, I'm going to do this TEDx talk. I want to make an impact on the audience, the people that are in the room, and I'm going to do it well. Like, I'm not going to fluff it. And I want to make sure it makes sense. There's goals that I had when I was doing that talk. And so for me, it took me 3 months to write it, to like it, and then to memorize it. I think the hardest part is the memorization part. You know what I mean? Because it's timed, it's videotaped, obviously it goes on like the TED channel, it goes on YouTube. You can't make it up off the top of your head. It's not something that you can just like, I'm just going to go wing it, You have to
speak from my heart, and you're like,
you have to have structure to it. Yeah. And then you also have to present an idea, not necessarily that's unique, but that has a unique twist to it that people can digest. And so for me, it was really that memorization part, so that when I did go out on stage, all the nerves were gone, and I was just in the place of, I'm going to serve. I remember right before I got on stage, they put me first, by the way. They were like, you're going to be the first speaker, because they thought I was really good, which is very humbling. But for me, I'm like, oh my gosh, why do I have to be first? So I remember being backstage and them calling my name. And right before I went out there, I was like, it's not about you. It's not about you. There's hundreds of people in this audience. Just go and share the message and do your best to make an impact. And I just went out there, and that was it. I went into this space where the words just rolled off my tongue. And my main goal was to connect with the audience. So I laughed with people in the audience. I looked at people in the audience, and yeah, it was a great journey for sure.
One of the people that I really look up to is Tony Robbins, and I listened to some weird stuff from him today, where he talked about his first speeches and how he got himself into state, which is really important. It feels like the kind of energy that you bring on stage. And one of the things that he said that I really liked was, when he has these conversations with his anxiety, like he told them that there's no discussions. Like, we are gonna like deliver. We're gonna be high energy right now. I was like, oh, I didn't know you can be like a really strong leader within your voices. I thought you had to convince themselves. What was your ritual, or what are your rituals when you go in front of a crowd in order to tell stories? Because this is in the end what we all do. It's like tell narratives that are empowering or curative in nature.
Yeah, and I love what you just said about Tony Robbins, because I do the same thing, right? It's a lot of times people think that we're fearless, and it's like, no, actually that's not true. Or that we don't have what I call monkey chatter. It's like that voice in the head that's like, you can't do it. All of us have it, even the greats. But the difference is similar to what you said about Tony Robbins, is that we have conversations with ourselves that basically say, hey, like, this isn't up for discussion. Okay, like, I'm going out on stage, I'm going to write the book, I'm going to build the business, I'm going to do this, and thank you for your feedback, but right now, like, I'm shutting it down and I'm going to go do, right? Yeah. So we have the same thought, but we just like, we manage those thoughts the best that we can. But, you know, in regards to storytelling, for me, it goes back to reading the room. You know, what story should I tell, right? And so one thing that speakers can do that I encourage is make a list of your stories that you think are really impactful, that can connect with an audience. And then when you're in front of an audience, you get to decide which story is going to best serve them, right? So, for example, if I'm speaking to a room full of women, I might share a different story than when I'm speaking to a room full of executive leaders. But I have stories for both, right? And so I always have like one overarching story. And then in the moment, I just come up with stories off the top of my head that are true, that happened to me. But I read the room, and by reading the room, then I can say like, oh, I remember this one time. And I think that's also a really nice, you know, attribute to have. And also talking to people before you speak. Because when you talk to people in the room before you speak, it reminds you of things, or you can connect to them. You know, like you can say, before I got on stage, I talked to Joshua earlier, and Joshua was telling me about how when he woke up this morning, he had a really hard time getting out of bed and showing up. Well, guess what? Showing up is one of the hardest things to do. So if you showed up today, you should be proud of yourself, because not everybody does it. You see what I mean? And then you just like kind of connect the pieces.
I love that. You also did a bunch of coaching, right? Over the years. Like 50,000 people is a lot of people. I think that qualifies you as an expert in coaching. Tell me about a case or a client that you had that helped you become a better person. Because it's in my private practice, it's I treat each client, or at least this is how I put them, as a teacher of mine. Is because like I am privileged to listen to their stories, and they all have these unique stories about themselves where they tell me something about the human condition that I often didn't know before. Do you have like somebody who has a special place in your heart where running into that person felt particularly meaningful, if that question makes sense to you?
Yeah, and I think that, you know, so the company, Rise Up For You, we do coaching, right? So that's a big part of it. So I do a lot of coaching. My team does a lot of coaching. And you're right. Like there's a story in everyone, right? But I would say overarching, the thing that I've learned the most about coaching is more empathy. Because I have to remember that not everybody speaks the same way I do. Not everyone is the same type of functioner. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I'm very high functioning and I'm on and I go. And sometimes people they're not like that. Or they're trying to grow to be that way, right? And so it's my energy, it's the words that I use. So I remember one time I had a client, and she's actually very high functioning. And I said something and I was like, you know, da, 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 da. And I can tell that over the next couple weeks, she was disengaging, withdrawing. And I'm always like, let's have a conversation. I don't let my clients like pit her off. I'm like, what's the problem, you know? And I remember her saying, that really hurt my feelings 3 weeks ago. That whatever you said just bothered me. And then I was like, all right, I'm sorry. And like, mind you, she's paying me, I'm the coach. But the lesson is, who cares if you're the coach? Who cares if you're the expert? Right now, we're having a human moment. What about what I said in that coaching session hurt your feelings? Well, you said this and you minimize it to this. Got it. You're right. That's very clear. That's a great lesson for me to learn. And I think that part is so important to remember as a coach, because sometimes as a coach, we get into our ego, right? We're like, I'm the expert. I should be telling you how to live your life, you know, da, 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 all the things. And that was a very powerful moment. And I remember telling her at the end, thank you for sharing that with me, because as my client and me as the coach, We have to communicate. Your success is my success. So if you don't feel like something feels good for you, then tell me that, because I will always shift it for you as long as it's in alignment with my character. And of course that was. And ever since then, the relationship has been amazing, beautiful relationship. We still keep in contact, but that was a really valuable lesson that honesty without compassion is cruelty. So just be mindful of the languaging that you use. No coach is perfect, right? And just remembering that if you're a high functioning individual, some of your clients might not be in that same space. That doesn't mean they're not successful. That just means they might not be on that same length of energy. And then how do you modify it to best serve them?
I think that's really difficult, and I struggle with that myself a lot, because I'm a serial entrepreneur myself, and my mind goes always as in 100 miles an hour, and like entrepreneur Daniel is not the person that my client needs when we talk about trauma, for example. it's like this is not about solving this issue as quickly as possible. Shut up and listen. And for coaches who just started, one of the things that really helped me there is because I'm like I teach integrative therapy, psychoanalysis, habit formation, belief formation, but also cognitive therapy and systematic therapy. I write down like a question on my sheets. Who do I have to be today in order to serve this client the best possible way? It's like, do I have to be more like, I don't know, Sigmund Freud and listen and talk about their parents? Do I have to be Skinner? Do I have to be problem oriented? And it's matching like what you can give to what your client needs is really important. Don't I don't know, particularly like entrepreneurs are really, it's like they are on caffeine. It's like, blah, 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 blah. We can do this and this and creativity. And it's like your clients, they will go with it. But it's by the end of it, you had the session for them and not the other way around. How many podcasts did you do in your career so far? It's What do you feel is a question that you haven't been asked that you should have been asked by now?
What the number one skill is that people need for success.
What is it?
What is it? I get to share.
Oh, please don't just share the question. Now I need to know.
It's self-confidence. It is self-confidence, because we do a lot of research in our company, and in the last year we asked over 2,000 working professionals that are in the corporate space and that are entrepreneurs, right? So either they run their own company or they're in corporations. 83% of adults, 83% said that their number one challenge was confidence. Imposter syndrome, taking risk, speaking up, perfectionist mindset, managing the thoughts that are in their head, not taking their inability to take action. And, I always say, don't be a content consumer, be a content activator. And because people all day long, they go get degrees, they go get certifications, they build their technical skill, but they haven't done the work to build their human skills, which is that self-confidence piece. And the reality is that if you don't love yourself, if you don't have confidence in yourself to take action, you're not going to take action. You're going to stay exactly where you are, or your communication or your behaviors in the workplace or in your relationships or in your love life, whatever. It's going to come out and it's going to make an impact, probably not the way that you want. I mean, I see business owners and entrepreneurs all the time that are like, help me build my business. I'm like, you don't need me to give you business strategy. What you need is confidence to take action. What you need is the ability to go and execute. You already have everything you need. I built my company with $100 with Google. How do I build a website? I type it into Google, right? What do I need to start a podcast? I just learned from there. And I think that's the key. But a lot of people won't do that because they're worried that, oh, what if I'm not good enough? Or I don't know how to do this. And those things stop you from taking action.
If we would do an exercise with our listeners, because I think what we are talking about is not just confidence, but it's a combination of very valuable virtues, right? It's, if you would break down confidence into human qualities such as courage or faith or Because like if you believe in yourself, like what's an exercise that people who could listen to us could do that would increase their confidence?
Yeah, I'll give you the hardest one right off the bat, which I'm sure you're familiar with, Daniel, and that's reverse engineering. So what's the top belief right now that's getting in the way of your success? The top belief that you have about yourself that's getting in the way of your success. So I was at a conference on Thursday. I was the keynote there, and somebody raised their hand and they said, I'm not a good speaker because English is my second language. So like that was their belief, and they want to be a speaker.
I said that today already.
You did the same thing, right? So that was her belief, and she wants to be a speaker, but she's like, I don't think I'll be a good speaker, because she was from Venezuela, and so English was her second language. So write down the top belief that you have that's getting in the way of your success, and then next to it put I remember when, and I want you to try to trace back where that belief came from, because every belief comes from somewhere. It comes from someone, it comes from something. And I just finished my yoga certification. And
Congratulations.
Thank you. My yoga teacher said something that really resonated and stuck with me. And she said, what happens is that like somebody gives you a jacket and they make you wear this jacket, right? They put this jacket on you, but the jacket doesn't fit you. It's not your color. You're busting out of it. It's uncomfortable. It doesn't feel good. It stops you from like opening your arm because it's stuck. And you still wear the jacket because you think it's yours and you need to wear it. And it's the same thing with our beliefs, is that so many different experiences in our life have put certain beliefs in our head, and then we believed it, and over time it became us. And now subconsciously we're taking action, we're behaving, we're communicating based off of these beliefs, and they're getting in the way of our ability to move forward and to take success and be happy in our life. And we need to get rid of it. So put the belief down on one side, and on the other side, dig deep and try to figure out, where does this belief come from? What experience, what person, what situation? And don't stop until you figure it out.
I love that. I created a lot of exercises like that. And one of the things that I would like to add is, if you discover a belief, like do a short cost benefit analysis of it. It's like, what is this belief giving me? What is it costing me? Because, for instance, when I was a student and I was 17 years old, I got kicked out from my third school. I was a rather obnoxious boy, I would say. And the parting words from my teacher were, Daniel, that head of yours is no good. You should learn to work with your hands. And that stuck with me. I felt stupid for 10 years or something. And it affected me so badly. And nobody taught me in that situation, hey, these are some questions that you can ask yourself in order to validify the source of the programmer of that particular belief. And one of the reasons of why I created the Behavior University, which is going to launch soon, is because it really hurts my heart to see people who don't go after the things that are meant for them because they decided years ago that this isn't possible for them. I know so many women who don't try again after their first divorce. I know many people who don't create that business because they feel that they don't have what it takes. Many people who, I don't know, will never start that diet because they feel they're just an obese person and it's not within their identity. Self-image management is a beautiful word that always comes to mind. We've talked a lot about confidence. When was a time in your life where your confidence wasn't as it is right now? Do you have like a favorite failure story of yours?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting one. I think everybody in their life has areas that they could always do more work in. Do you know what I mean? So for me, that area has always been like love, like romance, romantic relationships, right? Finding the right person. So, there was a time where I was a very like high functioning executive. I was 27 years old, 200 team members under me. And I left everything behind to pursue love. And after 2 weeks of leaving, came right back and I lost everything. I only had $100. That's all I had. I had $100. So like my house on the lake, luxury car, all my clothes, I only had 2 luggage and $100. And I came back on the plane and I remember crying. And it's interesting because in that moment, I did have that feeling of like, ooh, how does this happen to somebody that is educated, right? Like we always go through these things. Like I have 3 degrees, I was this, was super successful, and yet I still made this decision, right? We always, that's what we do as human beings, is like we go through these things in our head. And I just remember going through those moments and thinking, oh man, that was a massive failure. How the heck did I get myself in this situation? And I just had to remind myself that self-compassion, 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 that what did you learn? What did you learn from this? And then using your pain as fuel for growth. And I think it's also important to recognize the ownership that you have in failure, right? So sometimes situations happen in your life and you have to be able to look at it and say, what could I have done better? What could I have done better? What were some red flags? What were things that maybe I ignored, my intuition, that I'm not going to repeat again? And then what are the things about this situation that are not mine, that I'm not going to take ownership over? And I think it's very important as individuals to be able to decipher the two, because sometimes things happen to you in life that aren't great, but it's not your baggage to take on. And then there's things that happen to you in life and you have to say, yeah, I could have made a better decision there. And the next time, this is what I'm going to look for.
Yeah, I like that. It's time traveling is one of the best things we can do in order to cope with trauma. It's like, what role did I play in my catastrophe? And what is the lesson from it? And the hardest lessons for both my clients and myself, of course, are those where you did your best, but it still didn't work out. Where those moments where you did everything right, but still everything went to the shitters. Whether it's with love, it's in business or whatever. It's like life has a strange element of randomness, definitely to it. Before we close down this interview, what are your current projects and what's next for you?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So we have some great programs coming up for 2022. I mean, that's basically what we're focusing on right now. Actually, we have a New Year challenge coming up too. So we call it New Year, New You, Master Success. So it's a 30-day challenge that's coming up in December to help individuals like to step into the new year with a new clarity and new focus and really to take action. And then we're working on some really great programs in regards to confidence and then what we call mastering success. But what is mastering success, right? And so we have those 2 programs coming up in 2022. Of course, our company is doing some great work with other companies as well. And just lots of keynoting and making more of an impact. We have doubled our impact numbers for 2022 and we're working towards achieving that.
Where can people find you?
Thank you. Good question. So everything is at Rise Up For You, completely spelled out. So you can go to riseupforyou.com. You can find us on all social media at Rise Up For You. It's all the same handle, super simple. So would love to connect with you. Would love to meet you also. Perfect. Thank you, Daniel.
What is the book that people
Rise Up For You?
It's Rise Up For You. Go up with the names that work. What was it like for you to write a bestseller? Because that's strange, right? You write a book and it's is it any? I don't know how many. Did you write?
I wrote one book so far. I have another one coming, but
okay.
I like it's in the works. You know, I didn't. Again, it's like, what's the intention of writing the book, right? It was to get the message out there, and so it wasn't perfect, right? It was not perfect. I mean, I released my book, and there was a ton of grammar mistakes, and that's fine. That is fine, because for me, I'm not an English writer, and I don't, and I have an editor, and that was fine. But people loved the book. The story resonated. It was vulnerable and strategic, right? I shared my story and I gave like tools, but nobody came back and was like, "Ooh, you missed the comma on page 32." People sent messages that were like, "That was a great book." I read it and I was like, "Oh, there's a mistake here and mistake here." But like, that's the point, is like, just do it, take action, and it doesn't matter. It was cute though, because 2 days ago, somebody bought my book at the conference and they started sending me all these messages about the things that they love. "Oh, I love this chapter." And then they were like, "By the way, on page 36, there's a little grammar." That was like one
Yeah,
little
it's
thing out of the 15 messages that they sent about the impact. And I was like, oh, thanks for telling me. But it wasn't a big thing, you know? And I think people stop themselves from taking action because they're like, it has to be perfect. And I just remember when I released the book, I'm like, I don't care if it's not perfect. Let me get it out there. Let me push the message out there.
I think that's the most important lesson that I took from our call today, is it that it's not about you. It's about giving, it's about contribution, about helping, and everything else is narcissism, I feel. If you worry too much about what people would think about you, you're not aiming at the right thing. Anyway, 2 more questions, then I think we got a good conversation for our listeners. First question is, I had you for an hour on my show. And the purpose of this interview was it to learn how you became the person that you are today, so that other people can follow your example and become honorable human beings themselves. What's a question that I didn't ask you that when we hang up you feel, actually there would have been a good question that he should have asked me, but he overlooked it because maybe he didn't even conceptualize this as a problem or something like this? Anything that comes to mind to these 17-line question that I always throw at you?
How do you tap into your own potential? How do you tap into your own potential? And I think that there's a couple ways to do that. The first is, again, start building that self-confidence and that growth mindset. Because the growth mindset is the mindset that says, I don't know how to do this. So what? I'll figure it out, right? And also tapping into your potential is hanging out with people that are positive people that can uplift you and that also they're also trustworthy enough to tell you when you're not using your potential, right? Because sometimes other people have to tell you, you can be so much better than that. Or how come you're stopping yourself here? And that's why I think it's so important to have a coach, which I do as well. Because even with myself, I know how to pull my potential out, but there's always something that somebody else will see in you that says, have you tried this? It's in there. Yeah. You can get it. So I think that that's an important question. And I think that if people feel stuck, like they don't know how to move, like surround yourself by a positive tribe of people that are willing to like pull out from you as well.
Well, I can recommend you as a coach for anybody who's looking. Maybe they send you an email to close up this long, beautiful conversation. I would like to ask you one last question. We talked a lot about death today, a very important, very serious topic. If you would die one day and you would stand in front of the gates of heaven, what would you like to see and hear when you enter that realm?
That's a good question. I would like to see my parents. And I would like to, I just envision a bright light. That's it. My parents and a bright light. That's it.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Your parents sound like great people. I'm happy for you. Okay. Thank you for being on the Psychology Podcast. Let's talk soon. That's it. Well, folks, this was today's episode. I hope this could add some value to you guys. This podcast still is in its experimental phase, so please let me know what you liked and didn't like. You can let me know on my blog, danielkarim.com, or on social media. As always, thank you so much for listening and tune in next time.